Thomas Pringle.
Thank you, Last Corla, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to contribute to the statements today on the Constitutional Convention. The Government's response to the Constitutional Convention recommendations makes for sobering reading, I think. According to Second Republic, overall the Government has accepted 32% of the recommendations for constitutional reform and 58% of the recommendations for policy reform from the Constitutional Convention. Now that might look good on paper when you look at it, but when we dig deeper into it, we see that just 11% and 5% of these respectively have actually been implemented. Most strikingly, and according to the Second Republic, key provisions such as citizen initiatives, like the one-year initiative that I have been campaigning for, have been rejected and have received ambiguous responses from the Government at best. It will be very important as we enter the general election campaign that incoming candidates add citizen initiatives to their agenda and indeed establish a second constitutional convention as called for by the Second Republic, or citizens' forums as proposed by the one-year initiative. It is vital that the Government acknowledge that it is 313 days overdue in responding to these reports. That is just pathetic. It's clear that the Government has not taken the Constitutional Convention seriously or parliamentary procedures seriously if it isn't bothered to come to the Oireachtas to respond to reports within 4 months. Another point I want to make is that the 66 ordinary members of the Constitutional gave up their time free of charge and were incredibly dedicated to the process. They deserved more respect and recognition than has been shown to them. If that doesn't make you angry, what about the fact that this Government will be between 533 and 660 days late in responding to the final 4 reports being debated here today? I want to dedicate my time in relation to the advocacy for economic, social and cultural rights to be taken on board by this Government, or the next Government, as the case will be. Your Government voted down my bill last year to have a referendum enshrining these rights in the Constitution, and at the time the Government said about how difficult it was, and it's been mentioned today about how difficult it would be to actually do this. It actually wouldn't be very difficult. But what would be difficult would be for governments living within the burden that would place on them to actually vindicate the rights of citizens across in the economic and social cultural sphere, and that's what would be difficult, and that's what the Government wants to resist. Limited provision is made for economic, social and cultural rights in Bunreacht na hÉireann. Enshrining such rights in the Constitution would bring the Constitution into line with the growing trend in many countries and have revised their constitutions to include ESC rights. 26 other EU states have made some form of constitutional provision for economic, social and cultural rights. And internationally, 106 constitutions protect the right to work, 133 provide the right to health care. This is all demonstrative of the tangible idea of these rights being reflected in our Constitution. In the 9th and final meeting of the Convention in February 2013, 85% of the members of the Constitutional Convention voted in favour of strengthening these rights, and the Government made a commitment to respond to the recommendations within 4 months. In March 2014, the Constitutional Convention sent a recommendation to the Government to implement these rights, of which the Government was due to respond by July that year. Nearly a year later, and we are still awaiting a response from the Government to proactively address the status of ESC rights. It is important, I think, to give an idea of what these rights would look like to counter the lingering myths presented by the Government. The right of everyone to the opportunity to gain their living by freely chosen or accepted work and to just and favourable conditions of work. The right of everyone to form trade unions, join a trade union of his or her choice, and the right to strike. Social rights would provide the right to social security, protection and assistance of the family, the right to everyone to adequate standards of living for them and their family, including food, clothing and housing, the continuous improvement of living conditions and the right to be free from hunger. The right of everyone to the highest sustainable standards of physical and mental health, and the right of everyone to education. Cultural rights would entail the right of everyone to take part in cultural life, to enjoy the benefits of scientific progress, and to benefit from the protection of the moral and material interests resulting from any scientific, literary or artistic production of which he or she is the author. I think that that's something that our Constitution should provide for, and that's something that should be difficult for governments to achieve, because governments, it's about changing the culture of governments in this country and ensuring that those rights are vindicated, and that's what this government is afraid of.